Tarek Fatah, I want to get an email to you we got from Singapore, if I may, from Shamali Mahibalan, who wrote in saying, Canada holds back the immigrant community. When immigrants are allowed to live in their own enclaves, they retain their own identity. How can they become part of the majority? And there are many viewers like this who see multiculturalism as a potentially bad thing, where, you know, if groups are ghettoized, that it's very hard for them to balance their ethnic roots with being integrated into the society.
I would agree with your email from Singapore, and as much as I support the mayor, I disagree with his notion that the Anglo-Canadian model is something to be proud of. We have serious problems in Great Britain. We've had third-generation Pakistani Britons who simply have contempt for their society. Some of the most radical elements in Canada today are not immigrants, but were children of immigrants. And no matter what we do, the elephant in the room is Islam. It is the presence of the Muslim Brotherhood in our major cities, in our urban schools, and that's the challenge we'll have to face. The difference in Canada and the United States is that whereas at any time jihadis or Islamic radicals have raised their heads, it has been Muslim organizations that have stood up to them. And I'll give you an example. It was Muslim organizations that opposed the imposition of Sharia law in Ontario. You compare that to what has happened in Oklahoma, where 70% of the population voted to outlaw Sharia, and it is a Muslim organization that has gone to court to demand that popular sentiment of the people be defeated. So the outcome of this is that ordinary people, in their frustration as to how people use the system to stand up and say Sharia law has to be allowed, fail to understand that wherever Sharia law has been imposed, there has been disaster. And in Canada, it's the only Western country where Muslims have spoken out against it.
Okay, well, Mr. Mayor, we've got an email here, if I may, that came in from South Africa, from Lauren Murray, who wrote in saying, there is such a spectacle being made about Canada electing the first Muslim mayor, similar to that of Obama becoming the first black president. The focus should be less on religion and race, and rather on policies and capability. Now, critics often, though, refer to Islam as a religion of violence, and I wonder what, you know, the issue that might be, how much of a problem that misperception, that negative propaganda can creep in. And again, when that issue of Sharia law is being debated, there are those who say, well, of course, it's potentially threatening.
You know, in this country, we're so over this. And, you know, Mr. Fatah has made a career out of making this, frankly, a bigger deal than it is. And it's not. You know, the one and only example we've had in the history of this nation on Sharia law was an attempt to have alternative dispute resolutions in the case of divorce, as happens in other communities. In the province of Ontario, it was decided not to do that many years ago, and we've moved on.
No, but it was Muslims who fought against that.
So of course.
No, we haven't moved on.
Mr. Fatah,
we haven't moved on.
Spoke against it. Tell me,
no,
give
but
me
that's
examples,
the whole point,
if you will, Mr. Fatah, of people of this huge radicalization jihadists who are trying to make Sharia law happen in Canada. It's just not true.
Let me give you an example.
Not true.
Let me give you an example.
Go ahead.
Let me give you an example, since you asked a question. The Toronto 18 terrorists.
Go ahead.
The recent terror attempts by the Montreal
Were they after trying to get Sharia law in Canada, Mr. Fatah? Or were they jihadists aiming at other issues in the country? You know, this is a country of 30 million people, Mr. Fatah. You're going to have radicalization. May I finish? You're going to have radicalization in any community.
No, you haven't allowed me to finish.
What my election proves, and what living here in this country proves, is that these radical elements are fringe elements, as they are in America, as they are in Britain. And that we have a society that has managed to do that. The Toronto 18 were brought to justice long before they did anything, and in a community that vastly condemned what they were talking about. And they're in jail, Mr. Fatah. This is the point.
Gentlemen, I'm going to interrupt in a second. I'll be back with you, Mr. Fatah, in just a second for a response, but we do have to take a break here. When we come back, what lessons can the world learn from Canada's diversity? Don't go away.